Hey everybody, it's Chris. We are going to paint a laser cut project tonight. As a lot of you know, I have a lot of different interests. One of those being a laser. I love to do painting, acrylic pour painting. I love to do badge reels. So many different things, tumblers, you name it, and I've probably done it. But my latest obsession, I guess, is my laser. I've had it for probably a year and a half now, and I've shown a few projects with it, but tonight we're going to paint a lilac insert for a flower pot, and I designed the flower pot myself. I like to take different files that I have and kind of manipulate them into something else. This particular project, these lilacs actually fit into this adorable typewriter, which I finished off the other day. There's 3 little inserts, as you can see, 3 different heights that go into the typewriter. And then the typewriter has, if I take it out, I'm probably never gonna get back in. The typewriter itself has little notches or grooves for these inserts to sit into. So there's no paint down here. You do not want to paint the bottoms because it's a very snug fit. So you can't have any paint on there or you'll have a really difficult time getting the inserts down in there. But I thought I purchased the typewriter as soon as I saw it. She already had like a teacup and like a terracotta looking pot that went with it. But as soon as I saw the typewriter, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta have that. I just love old vintagey typewriters. I mean, not to date myself, but I may have learned how to type on this particular style of typewriter. And then of course the teal, I mean, how can you not paint it teal? Even though that's probably not the color that they came in. I don't think they were quite that glamorous. But anyway, so this is the peony insert that she has. And I thought it was really pretty. And I had bought the lilac insert, but I thought not everyone loves a typewriter. And I didn't necessarily love the teacup. It just wasn't my thing. But I thought, how cute would it be if it were in a flower pot? And so I designed this particular guy for the flower inserts. And I thought this would be a nice option for those that maybe don't really care about a vintage typewriter. So I will show you how I designed this guy in another video. But tonight we're just going to go ahead and paint the lilacs. And we're going to paint the pot, and I'll show you how it all goes together. But I thought maybe I could share some of my tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way on painting and kind of help you if you're just beginning this, or maybe you've never painted flowers before. Hopefully this will help you as well. So we're using acrylic paints. I like the Deco Art paints. I also have some of the folk art paint, and I also have one from Michaels, Craft Smart. I haven't quite decided what color they're going to be. I need 2 different colors, and I'm kind of leaning towards these 2 right here. I think these 2 kind of go nicely together, but I kind of want to go more purple because I did the peonies in pink, and I feel like this kind of lends a little bit more to pink. So I think we'll go with these 2 colors. I want 2 different colors because I want to do a little bit of shading on them and have them look a little more realistic. As much as possible anyway. My 2 favorite greens when I'm doing like a botanical flower type painting is the Hauser light green and the Hauser medium green. And these work really nicely for the leaves. Again, that is what I used for the peonies, and this is the lighter green and the darker green. So again, I kind of like to use 2 different shades just to kind of keep it a little more realistic and kind of give it some depth. So I've got all of my pieces cut out, and I kind of have things laid out as far as like what is greenery, what is the flowers themselves. We're going to be using cosmetic sponges tonight, and I've actually cut them in half. This one I've actually cut into 3 pieces. So this one I think was the 2, and then this one I actually cut down into 3 pieces. The sponges work really nicely to do paint because you can tap them lightly on the surface and hopefully not get a bunch of paint down into the grooves of the flowers or the cuts. It doesn't look really great if you have a lot of paint on the edges of your pieces either. So the sponges work really great for painting on the wood cutouts. So we're going to use sponges tonight. And then I have just a little plastic plate here. I like to use these and use these until there's just so much gunk on them that it's not even funny. In fact, this is the one I was using last night. I've been using this one actually for a while now. So there's lots of different colors on here, and I will use it again, but just not for tonight. I thought we'd start with a clean plate so that you can kind of see hopefully a little bit more what I'm talking about. So I'm going to set this right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that hopefully you can kind of see the detail that I'm trying to do. I have my little camera set up here on my stand. So that should give you a nice view. And then hopefully, I was standing while I was talking to you, so hopefully I can keep everything in view for you. We're gonna start with the flowers. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure these are nice and shaken. As I said, I like to use the folk art and the deco art. I feel like they're both pretty much the same. The reason I buy different brands is because I can get different colors in different brands. For example, this one is called Violet Pansy, and I didn't find anything in Deco Art that was the same. And this is a Deco Art Wisteria. This is a really pretty soft purple. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some paint over here on the plate. I'm going to start by doing the lighter color first. You'll find that the wood cutouts will take probably 2 or 3 coats of paint, depending on what color you're doing. If you're doing a white, oh my goodness, white is a horrible color to have to paint. There's something about the residue that's on the wood pieces that just keeps burning through. No matter how much we wipe them off, it just seems like it takes forever for them to actually coat. So what I did was I tapped into my purple, I tapped it off, and what I'm looking for is coverage on the sponge, but I don't want a lot of pools of paint, if you will. So you can see this is still a little bit wet. I think we'll be okay, but I try not to keep it too wet. And then I just go onto my piece and I just start tapping. Now, I mentioned that we were going to blend some colors, but first we need to make sure that the piece is covered. So that's what I'm starting with, just the light purple. I usually start with the lighter color and make sure that they've got a nice base coat. Can I tell you, I sat here for probably 30 minutes before I started, trying to pick all the little pieces out, and I can see that I missed some in this one. I think this is going to be absolutely amazing, and I will link this file. This is a laser cut file by OB Design, Oyster Bay Design, I believe is the name of her shop, and I will link the file down in the description of the video so that you can find it yourself. I didn't do anything with the lilacs. I did not modify them whatsoever. We were using it as she has designed it. But as I was saying, these are very, very intricate. I mean, she's like got almost each lilac bloom, if you will, cut out, which I think is going to be absolutely amazing. And I think it's going to be really beautiful and hopefully very realistic by the time we get done because it is so detailed. But there were lots of little pieces that had to be popped out. So that would be why we're finding those now as I put paint on them. So it took me a little while to get this ready to be able to paint it. And it's pulling some of the little pieces up, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm probably going to do 2 coats of purple just so that I know I have a really nice base. Because when I do start to blend, I want to make sure that I'm not trying to cover too as well as blend. So I'm going to continue doing this, and then I'll pop back on when I have both coats of paint on. Oops. Come on. I'm going to have to stand here. Okay, so I have 2 coats of purple, or the wisteria, on our little lilacs, and I think I've found most of the little pieces that were still in here. Okay, so now we're ready to do some blending and give it some dimension. So let me get this back up in here so you can see. Make sure I've got you in frame. So I'm just gonna set this here. I haven't done anything with the greenery pieces yet. I'm just focusing on our little lilacs right now. It doesn't take very much paint to cover these either. So I always just start with a little bit onto my plate, and then you can always add more later. And then I'm also going to add in the darker color. And we'll set that right next to it. Okay, so what I like to do, I was going to show you too, since I was very light in my application of my paint, the sides of my lilacs still look really nice. They're not all painted and smudged up. So it definitely helps if you keep a light hand with it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same sponge that I used with my purple and the lighter purple. And I'm going to put a little bit of light purple on, and I'm going to do a little bit of dark purple. And then I'm going to come over here and tap it out so that it's kind of blended together. I feel like I have a little more dark purple than light purple right now, so we'll add a little bit more light in there. Okay, so now you can see my sponge is kind of half and half. And what I want to do is keep my darker edge out to the outside of the piece. And I'm just gonna tap around the edges of the flowers and see how that gives it kind of a little bit darker edge on the flower. And let me continue on the same group. And I think this is kind of where it would start. And then I want some on the bottom. And then what I'm going to do with the rest of it then is just kind of go in and tap. And by doing that, it's going to blend those colors together so that we don't have a harsh line. See how that works? And if I lift up a little bit so that my lighter edge is over here, then that can help me to distribute the paint, okay? So now you can see that I've got like darker edges and lighter centers. Okay, so let's do that again. We're gonna come back in and reload. So I have my darker edge. I'm gonna come out here on the edge of the flower. Not concerned about lines right now because we're gonna blend that in. I'm just creating those dark edges, and then we're gonna come back and we're keeping the darker part of the sponge out here on the outside. But then we're also laying down that center part so that it all blends together. So I'm just going to come around the bottom of it and up the top. And you can see now that it's all blended and you don't have lines. It's that easy, guys. Don't worry if you don't get like the perfect looking flower right in the beginning. It took me a little bit to kind of get this technique kind of under control, if you will. It just takes some practice, but I think it's worth the effort because I do think it helps the lilacs to look a little more realistic. Now I'm just going to come back in and kind of blend that around. And you can see that my edges, my darker purple is pretty thick now. So I just want to kind of be careful about where I'm putting that, and then I can lift up and put that purple back down again, the lighter purple, and then come over here and blend in how I want it to look. Just like that. Okay, and I could come back here and put in a little more light purple in the middle, and then set it down and blend in again. You don't want harsh lines, and it's very easy to get harsh lines if you don't go back over and tap it out. Okay. All right, so I'll let you look at this. I'm gonna stand up so I can be sure that you're in the good focus. Do you see how I have like the lighter centers? Okay, so that's kind of like our second step. We're gonna go back and do some little white highlights on them too, but they're looking pretty good so far. Oh, Riley's itching and shaking the table. It's a little mini Riley earthquake. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing this. Feel free to fast forward if you want to, but hopefully if you need a little more guidance, you can kind of watch and see how I'm doing these other pieces too. So I'm just going to go around the outside of the edge. These single ones are probably a little bit easier because that one we kind of had to figure out like where is the line for each section of flower. These will probably be easier. And I will say too, when you're working on smaller flowers, you want to make sure that you don't have like a ton of the dark purple towards the center, because you want to be able to tap that out and have that color, but still have the dark too. I'm going to go back in and get just a little bit more dark because I kind of wiped it out. And then I'm just going to tap it back. And you can always add more color. You can do more layers. I had a project that I did for my granddaughter for her nursery, and oh my goodness, I spent the better part of a Sunday working on getting my shading correct for the flowers. So it's just practice and more practice, really. It's not hard. You just have to kind of find your groove and figure out what works for you. But the sponges are definitely the way to go if you're going to do the blending like this. It's definitely easier if you're using a sponge versus a brush. It's really hard to keep everything wet with a brush. You can do it, but the sponge is definitely an easier way to do it, especially if you're working with bigger flowers. Okay, so that looks great. I'm just going to keep going into my little palette over here with my dark and my light. You can also do this like as you're painting, like as we got the second coat done. I could have came in and tried to hurry up and put the darker color on while the lighter color was still wet. But it's a little bit harder to do when you're doing large groups of flowers like this. If you're just doing 1 or 2 flowers, then that's probably the way to do it, is just go back and, you know, as the paint is wet on your final coat to cover, then just go back in with your other color for accent and add it, and while everything is still wet. You can see that I just dropped that purple paint right down the middle. Wasn't even thinking. But that's okay. I tapped it out with the lighter color and we're just fine. I love lilacs anyway, so this is a fun one to do. The main thing is you want to make sure that you don't have those big pools of paint on there so that your sponge is like super wet, because that's going to cause issues for you not being able to blend out the colors. So keep that in mind too when you're getting your sponge all ready to go. You don't want it to be too wet. It's a pretty forgiving way to paint, I think. You just want to make sure that you don't have any harsh lines so that people can see exactly where you blended. That's the key to this one, is just keep working until you have really soft colors, and just as it is in nature. Nature doesn't have harsh lines of colors, so we should not have them either. All right. Okay, guys. I'm going to hurry up and get this done, and then I'll pop back on. If you need more instruction, just back up and watch it again, I guess. But I'll pop back on when we're ready to start the green. Okay, so I have all of the lilacs painted. They turned out really nice. Don't be afraid to go back and add a little more color too if you don't love how they look. I kind of tended to add more of the darker purple because I thought, I love the color. I think it's really pretty. Okay, so let's start with some of the green then. On the other ones, I painted this particular foliage darker green, and then the other leaves are light green. So I think we'll just continue with that. Again, I'm using the Hauser light green for the lighter green, and then the Hauser medium green for the darker. I'm going to go ahead and put both of those on my plate though. And then just going to grab another sponge. I also reuse these sponges. I'll go ahead and rinse those out when I'm finished in soapy water and let them dry, and then they can be used again. So what I did learn from the last one, the peony one that I did, is that you want to make sure that you're painting everything on these particular pieces as foliage, because the lilacs are not going to show. So I know for sure this is lilac, but I'm pretty sure this down here may not get covered with the lilac, so I want to make sure that it's green. Same way with down here. Some of this will be foliage as well. So I'm just going to make sure that I have all of this green, and then I have one more piece that has the same little spiky stand-up foliage, I guess you would call it. The other one's kind of lay down. And then this looks like it's this type, so we'll paint that the other color. But I'm gonna go ahead and paint these pieces here as the darker green. Now again, these will take a couple of coats. Almost everything that I paint takes at least 2 coats of paint. Well, other than black, as long as you do a really good job, black usually covers on the first coat, but I don't think I've ever painted black and had everything covered. I think I've kind of missed it, or it wasn't a really great coverage. So you just want to make sure that you've got everything painted. I think that should take care of the darker foliage. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the same sponge and paint the lighter color too. If I get a little bit of light on there, or excuse me, if I get a little bit of dark on there, I'm okay with that. Again, I think it kind of adds to the natural look and the realness of it. I'm not going to get too fussy about, now that I don't want light green, but I'm not going to get too fussy about making sure that I have the correct leaf, the correct color. Because at the end of the day, not a lot of this is going to show, because this is the actual very back of the piece, and you're really not going to see a lot of the leaves and such when you get down around the base. So not too concerned with that just yet. And sometimes I can go back and add that second color while I'm still on this piece. So let's see if we can't add the second layer of paint while we have this one going. It usually dries pretty fast, and it doesn't have to be completely dry before you put a second coat on. You can also use you can also use a hair dryer to help to get it to dry faster too. And I don't think I'm in focus for you. Okay, so just going back and adding the second coat of my lighter paint. Again, not too concerned that I have all of the right leaves, the right color, because this truly is not going to show a lot being in the back. But I do want to make sure that the wood is covered because I want it to look nice from all the angles. Okay, so that's our green. Looks pretty good. I've got just a little bit of wood showing up here. I just want to make sure that it's covered. Okay, so there's that piece, and then let's move on. This is our middle greenery piece, and this is all this lighter green. Again, I'm going to go ahead and paint this because that very possibly could be showing after we get the lilacs on. And again, I'm just tapping. I'm trying to go straight up and down so that I'm not getting a lot of paint over the edges. I am very, very particular about that. If there's paint on the edges, then I have to take a marker and cover it. And that just takes time, especially when you're working with these little pieces, with these little cracks and crevices where it's going to be impossible to get a marker in there. So then I'm going to have to get a paintbrush with black paint, and I'm not going to be able to reach it all, and that's going to upset me. So it's just easier if I try to be careful and not get paint over the edges. So see, that's pretty darn clean. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so there's that one. These are little additional ones that go probably off the front of it. At least that's how it was on the peony. So these just get glued on to add some extra dimension off the front. So I'm going to paint those the light green. And I'm going to have to grab some more green. Okay. I still have dark green there, and I don't have a lot of dark green that I have to do, so we should be all right there with that. Okay, and then I've got this one that needs the lighter green. Again, don't worry about going on the flowers. Those are going to be covered up. We don't need to worry about those lilacs being green right there. And then this is our last greenery piece. We've already painted the dark green, so now we're just going to come in with the lighter green. And the dark green does need a second coat, so we'll do that real quick too. Squish some of that lighter green off. All right, and then we're gonna come back with the light green and do our second coat on this one. And I don't want to leave any wet pools of paint on top either. I want to make sure that it's all the same thickness. And that's one thing too, if you get too much paint on your sponge, it's not going to matter how lightly you tap, it's going to go over the edges. So you want to make sure you don't have a ton of paint on there. You don't want a soggy mess on your... Okay, so there's that one. And sometimes I pick it up and make sure that I don't have lines with my sponge. And then I'm just going to continue to put the rest of the light green on. And I think we're almost ready. Well, actually what we're going to do is paint the pot real quick. So I'm thinking with the flower pot, I bought some black flower pots at Walmart that were really pretty. And they looked really nice once you got the plant in there. And I thought, I think maybe we'll do a black pot with a stencil design on the front in a light gray, because I figure that's pretty neutral and should look good with no matter what flowers we put in it. All right, and then I've just got one piece left here that needs the light green on it. And I will put the names of the paint in the description of the video too, so that you'll see that. All right, so I have all of my, everything is painted now. You can see that I missed a couple of pieces here, so I'm just gonna pop those out real quick. And I want these to dry just a little bit because they're still a little bit wet, and I really don't want to mess anything up as I start to glue things together. And we may go ahead and put some white accents on the greenery pieces. It's easier to do it before you start to adhere all the pieces because you'll be able to get to all of the little nooks and crannies. So I'm just gonna set these up here real quick, and then we're gonna work on this flower pot. And I've got my black. So I'm using Lamp Ebony Black. And then we're going to use the Gray Sky, which is a nice light gray. That's going to be our stencil. Okay, so the cool thing about this, when you cut these files, I'll show you how I laid it out. I can show you how I laid it out on my program. I have an Xtool S40 watt, so I use the Xtool software. But what I did was, these center rings are basically rings. They don't have to be full pieces of wood. So the cool thing is when I cut this, I was able to place some of my flowers in between the layers of the pot. So that helped me to save some material because I was able to cut these out and save material and use these inner pieces of the pot. So this is like what it looked like when it was in here, and I was able to put some of the flower pieces in. So these are all laid out how they need to be. They have to have 4 spacers in between each notched piece. So let me show you. That's how the typewriter was too. It had four spacers in between each notch for each layer of flowers. So I have my back solid piece, and then I have a notched piece, and then I have 4 spacers, another notched piece, 4 spacers, and another notched piece. So nothing on these pieces really has to be finished. The only thing that I will finish is I will probably go ahead and paint the back of this black because the front is going to be black on the pot. So I'm going to leave this piece off, but the rest of this, we don't have to do anything to it because the only thing showing are the cut edges, which are already brown and look just fine. Okay, so this is the front of my pot. This is the back. I did do an engraved line down here on the bottom to give it a little bit of interest. Let me get my black on my plate. And again, I'm going to use a sponge, and I probably could actually use the purple because we're done with the purple. So I'm just gonna take an old baby wipe I have over here. And I'm just gonna kind of squish off some of the paint that's in there. And then I can use this in the black because the black is gonna cover. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do this in black. This will take a couple of coats, so if there is a little bit of purple coming through, not too concerned about it because it will be covered up with the second coat. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this. I am going to very lightly, I'm gonna make sure I don't have any wet paint, and then I'm going to very lightly go over my little scored line down here so that once it's painted, you can still see the score in the pot. You could also score that a little bit deeper too if you were concerned about it, but anytime you have an area that is scored or engraved that you're painting over, you definitely want to do light taps so that you're not covering up the pattern or the details that were created by scoring or embossing the wood. So I just lightly tapped over that score mark. And I've got a little chunk of paint there. I hate it when my little bottles of paint have chunks because I keep them covered up. It's not like they're sitting out open all the time. Okay, so just making sure that the coat of paint is even. And now I'm gonna do the back really quick. And I'm gonna fast forward so that I can do a second coat on these so that we're ready to stencil. All right, I've got 2 coats of paint onto our little pot front and back. Because we're going to stencil this, I kind of want this to set and make sure that it's really dry. I did kind of hit it with the blow dryer real quick. If the surface is rough, you can always sand it lightly. If you do sand it though, you would have to put a final coat on it because it will rough up the surface, so it won't be a nice clean surface anymore. I've got the back of it done, and I think while we wait for the front of it to dry so that we can stencil, I think we're gonna go ahead and glue all of our pieces together. So I have this laid out as it needs to be glued. So we are going to, I'm gonna flip it. Yeah, I think I'm good this way. Okay, so this is the back. I'm using Gorilla Wood Glue. This is the one that's the natural color, so it dries like natural wood. And hopefully she'll come out and flow nicely for us. So I'm just gonna make sure that my edges are glued, and I've got a bit of glue down here. We wanna be careful not to go into that little notch though, because we wanna make sure that our pieces go down into this little notch. So we wanna make sure we don't have glue down in there so that we don't have a problem with it going in. Okay, so I'm going to make sure it's lined up, but I'm just gonna continue going so that we can clamp this together because it's a lot of layers. There's 12 layers all together. But we're just gonna go ahead and lay these down. And if I'm fast enough, I can get it all together before it sets. I'm gonna get 4 layers down, and then we're gonna stop, make sure that it's straight, and then we'll continue to put the rest of the layers on. So there's the 4, pick it up, make sure everybody's straight, because you want everything to look nice and neat as it's sitting on someone's table. So we can always do a little bit of marker if we need to, but if we can get it straight, it'll look much nicer. And I definitely want to make sure that the bottom of it is even. Okay, so that's looking really good. Just going to wipe this little bit of glue off that squished out. We can always use a knife to get it off though. Okay, so there's that section, and then we're just going to keep on building it. So I'm going to fast forward through this part, guys. And we're going to make sure it's all sitting level. Looks good from the top. Looks good all the way around. All right, so now I'm just going to use my wood clamps. They're pink, of course. We're going to squeeze that together. Make sure she's nice and snug. There we go. I do have another big one. I wonder if we should. Let's actually do this. Put this over here. And then I've got a big one that we're gonna put right here, just to be sure. Okay. I do have a little bit of a lighter line there, but it is actually even, so we'll just use a marker and touch that up because it looks good everywhere else. Okay. All right. So we're gonna set this aside and let that dry, and then we're gonna go ahead and stencil our pattern onto our pot. I have a couple of different stencils, but I thought this, I think it's an arabesque pattern. Thought that would be really pretty on here. I cut this on my Cricut, and I think we're gonna leave it up above that little scored line so that it's part of that designer look, if you will. And then I'm gonna look up here at the top and make sure that I have it even across, that it's evenly centered on the pot. And then I just want to make sure this is where it needs to be. And if I was smart, I would probably put a little bit of tape there just to be sure that it doesn't move. So let's do that. That looks good. And then we're just gonna put tape on there so it stays where we want it. Okay. And then I'm going to use this gray sky. Actually, this is going to be a lot of gray on here. I just realized. I think we're still gonna go with it. If I hate it, then I'll wipe it off and do it again. But I think it'll be all right. Okay, so again, using our little sponge. Now this one, we definitely wanna make sure that we have this pretty darn dry because otherwise it's gonna seep underneath our stencil and it will not look good. But I do wanna make sure that I've got good coverage on here. And I'm just gonna tap it off. And then we're just gonna lightly tap onto the stencil. I'm gonna kind of hold it down because I don't want it to bounce all over the place. So as I said, I cut this stencil on my Cricut. These are Mylar stencil sheets, I believe, that I purchased off of Amazon. Kind of thinking maybe I should have, it's going to be more gray than black. Maybe I should have painted the pot gray and done the stencil in black. But we'll see. Like I said, if I don't like it, I'll redo it. So I'm just trying to make sure that I have all of my little patterns covered. I don't want any lines left like I have up here. So I'm going to go back with more paint. Now I could have used some stencil glue and probably adhered this, but that seems like a lot of work for just a little project like this. So I'll just hang on to it with my fingers and make sure that it's not bouncing and going places we don't want it to go. So I'm just going up and down so that I don't, hopefully the paint is not going underneath. At least that's the goal, for it not to go underneath. It's always the goal, right? If I am a little bit concerned that I have too much paint on, I try to go into the center of the design so that I'm not at the edges where it could bleed underneath. Almost done. Again, just trying to make sure that everything is even so that we don't have rough looking areas. All right, just gonna make sure that our coverage is pretty good. And we're gonna hope that when I pull this off, it's fantastic. All right, we're ready to see what it looks like? I'm ready. There we go. Oh, I like it. That turned out pretty good, guys. Kind of surprised. It looks like it bled under a little bit, but not bad. So I was kind of hoping for more of a black pot, but we kind of got more gray. But that's pretty cool looking. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry and then we will add it to the rest of the pot. While we let this dry, let's go ahead and glue our lilacs together. While we let the pot dry, let's go ahead and start assembling our flowers. I know that this is our back piece. It looks like these two large ones are gonna go here. And then this obviously is the middle. Well, not obviously, but this is the middle and this one goes here because it's the same shape. And then I know by the other one that this is the front piece and this gets layered on. And then we're also going to layer these guys on top of here. And then this is here, on here. And then this goes on top of here. These smaller ones are going to go on top of the middle piece. And then these are going to go here, okay? So before we glue those down, remember how I said it's easier to add our accents onto the greenery before we glue. So I'm just gonna show you how I do that. This is a Artistro extra fine tip paint pen. These are fantastic. You do want to make sure that you start them off on your paper. You push them down to get it flowing. And we wanna make sure that it is flowing. And I always make sure that I shake it pretty good. There we go. And then I'm gonna set this up here so you can see what I'm doing. So on these curvy ones, I kind of like to just take it, kind of do a little swoop on the leaves. And then I turn it however I need to so that I can keep my little swoopies going. And let's see, we put it on the top on this one. So we're gonna go here and here and here. This is another thing, like don't worry if it doesn't look exactly how you want it to look. It just takes a little bit of practice and you kind of have to get out of your head. Like don't get in your head thinking, oh my gosh, it looks awful or it has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is okay. And then I like to put kind of some little lines on the stems. But that's just me, you do you. And maybe we'll just put some little lines in the leaves too, because I kind of like that. You can do it however you want to do it. It is your project. And sometimes I just keep going and I don't know when to stop. Okay, so there's that piece. This piece, we only need to do these tops and then the dark green in the back. And again, little swoopies. Just to give it some interest. Like so. These are the ones that go on the top of the leaf. So I'm just kind of doing like the bottoms. And this one's not really going to show. And then we'll do the little line like we did on the other ones. So it all looks the same. And same way with this. I love the little paint pens because I think it's just so much easier than a brush. There are some people that are so darn good, but they can do this with a brush. I cannot make it look that way. So I realized my friend was going to be the fine line white marker. My friend Shelly uses markers a lot. She loves markers. Okay, so then that takes care of this guy. So those are all done. And then last but not least is our back piece. So let me get these little pieces all done. You can always go back and do a little more too if you like. If you're going to go over the white though, make sure that the first coat is dry. Otherwise, you may not get the result that you want. But this part is really easy and quick. Okay, so then this guy is the other leaf. I honestly don't think a lot of this is going to show because I think the other layers are going to cover a lot of it. So I'm not going to be too particular. And then I think this is kind of one of those leaves too. Okay, and this one. And then we're going to do this final one. The other thing that she did with her lilacs was to put some little speckles on them, which I think would be really cool. All right, find my cap here. But I think I think we'll do that after we get everything glued together. Okay, so for this, I'm gonna use my Art Glitter Glue. This is kind of a glue that dries clear, and it works really nicely for like flowers and things like that. So these are the bigger pieces, and they get stacked. So I did all of that shading, making them look beautiful, and then we're just gonna cover some of it up. So I'm just gonna kind of dot it over. It does dry clear, and then we're gonna line this guy up. So this is where that goes. So just kind of looking at my notches here and lining up the cuts. And sometimes it's easier to pick it up and look from the back. Okay. Because again, we want it to look nice. So you can see this was the cutout of the base, and then I lined it up to match that. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. I also like to finish off the back side of the layers too. So here's our top flower. We're going to lay it down, and then we're going to pick it up. That looks pretty darn good. Slide it over a smidgen. Now the Art Glitter Glue sets up pretty fast. You don't have a lot of time to work with it. So you kind of want to make sure that it's where you need it before you set it down. All right, and then we're going to pop these guys on the top. And I think we're just going to kind of center these in the flowers, okay? I'd forgotten that these get layered. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been quite so particular with the bases. Okay, so there's that piece. We probably could have painted some green down in here, but I don't think that it's going to show much, but we might go back with a brush and add that. Let's go ahead and do this top layer. I did forget about that as we were painting. That I probably should have came down a little bit further with the green, but that's okay. That's what paintbrushes are for, guys. Not a big deal. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and glue this on. The Art Glitter Glue is really great because it dries clear, and it is a very nice stable glue. I've never had anything come apart with it. So we're gonna line these up with our greenery. And I'm gonna pick it up because I don't wanna stick my head in your face or in the camera. So just making sure that all of our pieces are lined up. That looks great. And then we're going to glue our purple on. And this gets one of the bigger flowers. And again, lining up with the cuts on the lilacs with the cutout. And you can see this one's kind of at a little bit of an angle. Okay. And then we're going to add on our second layer. And you guys feel free to fast forward if you don't want to watch me gluing flowers together. Totally understand. And then we're going to do our middle layer. I'm going to just dot some green on here just in case it's not all covered. And I'm going to be very careful so that I don't stick my fingers in it since it's wet. You can tell I'm not being super careful here. All right. Let's make sure we've got this lined up. You definitely want to pick this up because, boy, it's not the angles that you think it'll be. That's for sure. Okay. My dogs are going crazy. I don't know what they think they hear or see, but Riley is a golden doodle and he has a big old bark. Okay. This is gonna go here. And then we're gonna put these leaves out here, and I probably should have done that while that was still dry, or still wet. Oh, I was trying to put it on the wrong one. It goes on this one. Okay, so this is gonna slide right in here, just like that. I don't think I'm gonna, so you can see how the leaves are all cut out. So it slides in right there. Okay, and then we're gonna put this leaf on. And it's gonna be notched around the flowers on this one. Just like so. Okay. All right, now, if I was really good at speckling, we would speckle. I'm not good at speckling. So let's switch gears. We're gonna grab our pot and put the front of it on. Release our clamps. Okay, and I'm going to add my glue to this edge so that we don't glue the wrong parts. This is the problem I have. I set this aside and then I forget to seal it up. There we go. Excited to see this. I think it's gonna be really cool. Okay, then we're gonna place this on the front. And we're gonna pick it up, make sure everything's pretty and perfect. Okay, wipe any glue away, and then I am going to set this bottle of paint on top to weight it down so it'll glue, like so, and I'm gonna shove this off over here, and then let's see if we can add some little dots onto these lilacs. All right, so I'm just gonna use my paint pen because I know that it'll do a cute little speckle. It might take me a little bit longer, but that's okay. I honestly don't think it's gonna take very long at all. So I'm just gonna kind of touch and dot along. Just kind of random. I don't necessarily need them at the edge of the petals. Just gonna do some little white dots. They don't have to be everywhere. But what a difference that makes, just to add that little bit of extra. I think that's one of the interesting things that I find about painting is that just the little additional things that you do can make a world of difference in how it looks. You know, when we're painting other things, like we'll add the little squiggle lines and the dots and all of the things, and it's just crazy what a difference it makes from taking a project to, you know, kind of wah to wow. It's interesting to me what a difference it makes. Okay, now I see that I'm totally trying to get like all 4 petals of these lilacs, which is probably a little bit crazy. And I'm just going to keep turning it so that I can get to the pieces underneath. This probably would have been a good thing to do before we glued together, but you know, didn't think that through, did I? But that is okay. That's the beauty of being able to turn it and get it to the areas you want. So right now I'm just going to do this on the bottom pieces, and then we'll go to the top. And I'm going to fast forward because you don't need to watch me go cray cray with all of the dots. So I'll pop back on. All right, I've got all of the lilacs dotted. What a huge difference that makes. I do think we probably should put a little bit of green in here. So let me just grab one of my paint brushes. And let's do that just in case it's going to show once we get it put together. Just kind of squish it down in there. I'm just going to kind of go down here just in case. I don't think it's going to show, but just in case it does. All right, so let's see if this guy is dry. Hoping it's dry. I think the back parts will be dry. Okay, so here's our pot. Looks really good. I do have to clear coat all of this, so I'll use a semi-gloss clear coat. That'll give it a nice finish too, and I will put a picture of it all assembled once we get done here. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of dry fit this so you can see how it looks. So this taller piece is the back piece, so this should go right in here. And as I said, they are a snug fit. And then this is our center piece, so it's going to go in here. And the reason there's 4 spacers is just because you've got layers on layers. So it's to give it enough space. And it really is a snug fit, let me tell you. Just going to lay it down. Sometimes if I can get the corner in, the rest of it will go. And I didn't even paint anything down below that, so it's still really tight. There we go. And then this is the final piece, and it's going to go right in here. I can see that I've got a little piece there. Let's see if we can't get that out before I put this together. There we go. Okay. And then this is going to go right in here. Again, just kind of put it in there at an angle. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Now you can see a little bit of green here, so excuse me, a little bit of wood, not green. I do have it down all the way. So I will take the paintbrush and put a little bit of paint down in there. So I'll take it apart. I will take it apart so that I can, oops, went the wrong way. I will take it apart so that I can spray everything. But wow, that's really pretty. I love it. I love the lilacs. Don't they look amazing? I mean, I knew it was going to be pretty, but holy cats. I almost want to put a little bit of glitter on there, but I won't. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and take this apart. I'm going to spray it with my Rust-Oleum Semi-Gloss Clear. That'll give it a nice finish. And then I will pop a picture of it at the end of the video. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will put the link to the lilac file as well as the typewriter file if you liked that one a little bit better. I might put a picture of the typewriter and the lilacs together. But either of these will fit. So she has several different flower ones. Take a look at it when you go onto her Etsy store. She usually has sales on the weekends, so don't ever pay full price for a file, kids. I will never forgive you if you pay full price. I never pay full price for my files. I'm just teasing. If you're like me and you see something you really have to have, I don't always wait for the sale, but I try to. I really do. Okay, so I'll put the link down below in the description to Jamie's Etsy shop where you can find the flowers, you can find the typewriter. This was a file that I made on my own, but I am going to do a video that will show you how you can do your own files too. So, and I might just touch on this real quickly so that if you're interested in doing like a little flower pot like this, I'll show you how I did that. It was super easy. But I think that's it for this time. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see something else in the future, please let me know. I'm always open to ideas of what you guys want to see. So thank you so much for watching with me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.